Gabby and I were here, and we have a lot of things that we want to talk to you about. There's three big news and one success story. Normally, we just do one and one, but this morning, things just kept popping off. The three news that we're going to be covering, and again, as always, feel free to let us know your questions regarding anything immigration. Galen here will help read through the questions to us. We'll be able to answer. Be as specific as you want, right? We are here to try to help as much as we can. But the three news that we want to cover in order is the first one, what's happening at the interviews. There's ICE agents at the interviews that happened yesterday, that happened today. And officers asking questions that we've never heard before, never seen before. Is it training? Is it not? We just want to share exactly what's happening right now because this is unusual. We've never seen this before. The second news that we want to cover is the potential $100,000 bond for all green card applications overseas. This is just a report on that's what they're thinking about. And suddenly a lot of things are starting to make sense on what Trump is doing, what this administration is doing, and what is the future of immigration. That's a huge deal. The third thing is talking about F-1 international students and the final rule that just came out and what that means for all future international students coming into the country. What can't be done anymore, what can be done. So there's three big things. And then the success story that we're going to be talking about is an N600K success story. Two kids flew into the United States as a tourist, went to the interview, and became citizens within a week. Right? That's an N600K success story. We want to walk you through all the details of it. We're very happy. We want to celebrate that and we want to share that with you. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can feel free to, ask us and we'll be answering. All right. So the first news, and this is actually the thing that inspired us to do these because there are things that make headlines, but there's other news that are really important that you only see on a day-to-day basis when you go in to the field office, when you're doing immigration cases, and to some things that don't make it to the news and that's impacting clients. And that's what we want to talk about. Because if you search this online, and Galen did this, this all morning, he couldn't find anything online. But what are ICE agents doing in field offices? What is their role? What happened? Why don't you share a little bit about what happened yesterday?
Yes, so we had a client attend an adjustment of the status interview at the Los Angeles field office. And basically, what happened is there were two agents that had very small badges on them. So they were dressed as just normal people and they're just standing in the room. And our client is waiting there to be interviewed. And obviously there is a lot of tension already going into these interviews. I think everyone is already like really, really like nervous and they don't know what to expect, especially during this climate, right? But to have two people just observing everyone there, like staring at people, just their every move, and then the client is just really nervous because they don't know, what's gonna happen with their case.
Now, a little bit more about this. We didn't tell the clients they were ICE agents. So our
Right.
attorney with the client went into the room where they're going to be interviewed, and there's the officer there who's supposed to be interviewing them. But obviously, our attorney saw the two other people that are ICE agents.
Right.
We didn't want the
And
client to
he
freak out.
recognized them
He recognized them.
because of the
So
badge.
our client, our attorney directly contacted you, and then you were thinking whether to contact me, and this was like 7 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, it was 6:35 in the morning.
Right.
The appointment was at 6:45 in the morning. So
And they weren't the only ICE agents there were two ICE agents in the room, but there were ICE agents outside
outside,
in the field
correct,
office
in
as
the
well.
field office, yeah,
Yeah.
just roaming around.
Okay.
So our attorney is saying, this is really unusual. Haven't really seen them in the waiting areas. Like they are around in in the building because they have an office there, but they are not really like in the waiting areas observing everyone, right? So it's very unusual. And then the first thing that we started, brainstorming is, why would our client be a target? She doesn't have any criminal record. She was never caught at the border. She's never been in proceedings. So just trying to like brainstorm and analyze on the spot, like why would she be the one that they are looking for? Should we just tell them, that they have an option to reschedule the interview? Should we leave? Should we stay? What do we do? So really just on the spot, the first instinct was, okay, let's think about our client's background. Why would she be a target?
Right.
If they would have wanted to pick her up, wouldn't you think that they would have done it outside the building if that was the case, if she was, So just thinking about all these things, and then with our attorney, very experienced, 25 years of experience plus, he is just shocked that they are actually in the waiting rooms now, right? So for the client doesn't know anything is happening. So we're just trying to brainstorm. We decided, okay, let's just wait another hour. The appointment was at 6:45. They were there at 6:35, but they did not get called in until 9:30. So there was a 3-hour wait time. In the midst of that, a lot of things are happening. But, I'm getting text messages and calls from both the attorney and the client that's nervous, just asking me for documents. I can't find this, I can't find that. So I'm like, okay, it's there. I'm like guiding the client, trying to brainstorm with our attorney, and then deciding whether we should pull you in or not, because you have appointments in the morning. You had a 9 a.m. appointment. So at the end, I didn't hear back for 30 minutes. And then I'm thinking, okay, I'm hoping everything is okay because no one texted me back. So around 9:55, so the interview itself was only 25 minutes. 9:55, I get news, okay, the interview's done. We're out of there. Everything went well. But it was just the tension. And then the client immediately calls me after I speak to our attorney. She, he's saying, okay, everything went well. There was just some questions that they were asking her about, who she came with. And she mentioned she had her 4 children with her. So now is that going to be a problem? So these questions are new questions that we had never, encountered before. And if they did ask these questions, it was just for select cases, not for every case. It sounds like now they really want to know who you came with, who paid for the person that brought you in, for the coyote, the person that helps cross the border, and where you bring in your children, right? So she calls, and then I tell her the whole story. I said, so that there was ICE presence there. We're trying to decide whether you should stay or not. We're trying to figure it out. She was just extremely grateful. She said, I sensed the attorney was kind of like moving around, on his phone a lot, but I didn't really get the impression that anything was wrong. I just thought he was doing his normal, like, busy thing in the morning.
And one really important thing is that the client needs to be at their best. And so much of our work, when we prep the client before the interview, when we prep the client that during that 3 hours before the actual interview, so that's the second major prep, and is so that they can answer well, they can be calm, they can answer like what the officers want, right? And so if they're panicking, then sometimes it makes the officer even more suspicious. And so in the midst of that, attorney, you made the judgment, this is a clean case, this is a good case. Most likely, it's a training situation. They're not targeting our client. It's one ICE officer taking another ICE officer, doing a training and watching everything. So we didn't want to cancel the case right on the spot, right? Because we could have just played it safe and say, you know what, our client is not feeling well, let's leave. But that could also trigger an investigation. Why are you leaving now? No, we're going to arrest you. We're going to detain you, right? And so I think you guys made the right choice, and it's a tough call, but only at that moment, people who really know the case can make that decision. And the client was able to do the interview well, and we'll see when the case will get approved, right? Is it going to be this week? Is it going to be a month admin processing? But it is absolutely bizarre that we saw there's ICE agents in that room. And you told me right afterwards, because our attorney was there for the rest of the day, people got detained.
Yeah, so there was a gentleman that got detained, some sort of like previous criminal record or something like that. But there was, so they were waiting for this person to come out of their meeting. And this is what, within the attorney shared. He's like, there were ICE officers inside where the rooms are, where the interview rooms are, and they were outside in the waiting room to prevent maybe this person trying to run. Right? So they want to make sure that they capture him inside, and that when he exits, that there is someone out there to catch him if he tries to leave. So, a lot of new different techniques and different protocols for ICE to operate into these field offices, but definitely something we need to prepare for and, work with our attorneys so that we can be hand in hand. And
for difficult cases, we're always advising clients now, if you're going into an interview, even if you're going in for a biometrics, even if you're going in for an ICE check-in that you've done 100 times, now there's always that possibility. And so definitely prepare your package well. You can present your equities. You can present why you could get a bond. Because a lot of these people, they're just living, but they don't have a formal bond.
Right.
They don't have a formal removal proceeding, right? And so now they show up, now they're presenting themselves. If they get detained, now you need to formally apply for bond. Is it going to be a 1 hour thing, or is it going to be a 1 week, 1 month thing, right?
This is funny seeing this Q&A right after finishing my shift as an immigration officer.
Wonderful. Yes. Well, let's talk about that. There's so much more we're going to go through.
Yeah, they said they updated the software and the systems now where it's easier, in my opinion, to misinterpret.
Misinterpret what? Is that what's the full
This is the USCIS officer.
Yeah, no, I think that relates to this morning, right? The
Uh,
client that went to the interview now that you're saying she got caught, but she never left the U.S. So are they misinterpreting whatever is in the system?
Oh, okay.
So the officer's saying, right?
Well, hi, officer. Help us with this, right? This morning, we had a client that went into the interview. We know it's a good case. We trust the client. We believe the client. And I know a lot of officers and CBP officers and consular officers, the clients lie to attorneys all the time. You know, like we know things that you guys don't know. But based on everything we know about the client, we know she never left the U.S. after coming in. There's so many documents for it. And just based on the way we converse with her, the way she is, we know she didn't. However, at the interview, she was challenged again and again, saying, we know you left. We know you left. They ask a whole bunch of questions and say, we know you left. We have documents to prove that you left and you got caught. And then ask a lot of more questions and then challenge that again. And the client was flabbergasted. The attorney was there reviewing everything. Like, we know she didn't. We're texting, we're preparing everything. But there was no document presented, right? Like, if the USCIS officer has proof that she did leave and it was definitively her and that she claimed to be a U.S. citizen, wouldn't they be able to present something? And why go through the whole interview and challenge her on multiple instances about this situation? And then she also just ended the interview and left, and seemingly it was okay. And was there other officers in the room too?
Yeah, there were 2 observers.
There was
so
2
now
officers.
It sounds like in every room there are 2 observers.
Yeah, 2 observers. 2 observers. So
2
one
observers.
and then
So
2
it's
observers.
Officer, 2 observers,
I see.
and then
So
14.
this is what we know, and also what we're hypothesizing. We know that there's a lot of USCIS officers from the California Service Center and other service centers that are now stationed at these interviews, right? Whether it's work remote privileges ending and now having to be in the physical office, a lot of service center USCIS officers are now learning how to conduct interviews, and so they're observing their training. So we know that, and we also know that there's a lot of training, there's a lot of hiring, they're trying to ramp up, and so there's USCIS officers observing, there's trainees observing, seasoned officers observing, supervisors observing, there's ICE agents observing, there's all these observing going on. But are there new techniques and tactics that USCIS is implementing? For example, is what happened this morning a tactic? It's fair, I understand, as government officials and as police officers and as the enforcement arm of the Department of Homeland Security, where you're trying to bait answers. And we've seen that done in the past, different administrations, and it's a fair technique. Law enforcement uses it all the time. We just haven't seen it this blatant, and we haven't seen it done across the board at all times. So, for example, are there these techniques where the officer knows that on record, they don't have anything where the client have left the U.S. and came back in, but they are saying that to see if they can get a lie, right? And make the client flustered. Is it a baiting technique, right? Again, law enforcement does that all the time, like police officers, traffic stops. But does USCIS, is this a new technique that the officers are doing, right? They're purposely saying something to get a reaction, to troll in a law enforcement way, to see if the client is going to volunteer new information that they didn't know about, right? Anyways, that's something that's new things that's happening. If you know, please let us know. If you can, I don't know, right? I don't know if you have an NDA, but that's another thing that we're seeing at these interviews. The second news that we want to talk about and share is the potential for the $100,000 bond for all immigrant visas. So this is what we're talking about. People who, your sibling petitioned you and you waited for 10 years and now you're ready to come into the United States. But before the consulate is willing to give you a visa so you can come into the US, so you can get the green card, they're going to make you pay for a $100,000 bond first. That just got reported by the Wall Street Journal. They're thinking about it. Now, who does that apply to? Maybe diversity. You won the diversity visa lottery. You can come into the United States. You have no family, you have no petition, you have no business, but you are able to immigrate to the U.S. The U.S. issued these diversity visas for people all over the world, for every country. You people win it, they come. Well, before you get this, pay for that $100,000 bond. This could potentially also apply for business cases. Maybe you're EB1, maybe you're EB2 in IW, maybe you don't have an official job lined up, but because of your extraordinary ability, your resume looks great, the U.S. is going to give you a green card. Well, now you might have to pay a $100,000 bond. Now, it sounds bizarre. It sounds like it has never happened before, but now I'm beginning to see a pattern. What's the pattern I see? Last year in January, President Trump issued an executive order canceling humanitarian parole. Basically canceling the customs officer's ability to let people in on a non-visa basis for a short term. They canceled it, and then in November, approximately, they reinstituted it in a way and say, now you just pay $1,000, and then you can get that bond, right? You could get that parole. In the past 2 years, we've seen immigrant visas get more and more difficult. We saw this year the United States, USCIS, is trying to reject a lot of adjustment status cases and push people back into their home countries. And now this pattern emerges where the immigration department in the United States and overseas is working together in the sense of pushing people to get their immigrant benefits overseas. But now if they have to go through overseas, now they have this additional $100,000 bond that they potentially have to pay for. And who does the money go to? It goes to the State Department. And so that's a tax that the U.S. citizens and people in the U.S. does not have to pay, because these are all funds that are paid for by foreigners overseas buying a bond, and then they get the visa, and then they come in, and then they still have to pay for everything else, right? Now, what are the details of it? These are just something that they're brainstorming. But once I saw this news, I am convinced that it is going to happen. I am sure it is going to happen, and I'm sure the details are going to be spelled out within the next 3 to 6 months. I see this pattern emerging where USCIS makes the green card adjustment status much more difficult, and now people are choosing to go back to their home country. And if they're in their home country applying for this visa, it's easier, it'll get approved, but now you have to fork up this $100,000 bond. Now, if it's a $100,000 bond, it might not, you don't have to pay $100,000. It's like insurance, right? Maybe you just have to pony up $10,000, maybe $15,000, and you buy the insurance. It's refundable under what condition? And so from the news we're seeing, the condition is once you have become a citizen, or once you've worked your 40 credits, you paid enough insurance, you paid enough into the Social Security, then we'll give you your $15,000 back. But what does that mean? That's practically going to mean maybe out of 500,000 green card visas that are issued every single year or more, potentially 1 million issued every single year, everybody paying 15,000. So that's 15,000 times 1 million. And the government is able to hold that money for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years without having to pay it back. And a lot of people never work the 40 hours, right? What if you petitioning your sibling is already 60 years old, they're already retired, they're not going to work 40 credits. And what if they come to the US and they don't meet the citizenship application? And so for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they never become a citizen. Plenty of people get green cards and never become citizens. So they just forfeit the bond. Basically it becomes an extra gift to the US government State Department, right? A bond that you never get back. And so I see the pieces coming together. I see this is a way that this administration is basically forcing immigrants to the United States with additional fees that is not approved by Congress, but it is going to fund the State Department, and it's going to fund the immigration system, and it's going to fund basically the U.S. machine. And I very much see it happening, and we are going to stay tuned to it. We're going to pay attention to it. But this effectively it hits multiple birds with one stone.
Right.
The government wanted to cancel diversity visa for the longest time. Congress is not able to muster up the willpower to do it. Well, this bond rule effectively cancels diversity visa, because most people who get the diversity visa don't have the funds to actually try to do it. Some do, but a majority of them don't, right? They weren't ready, because you win the lottery, you have to immigrate to the US immediately with the cost of living in the US compared to most places around the world, to be able to rent, find a job, assimilate into the culture, leave your family behind. That's nearly impossible. And then now on top of that, before even starting the process, first pay for a bond. It is effectively going to eliminate most people from diversity visa. Now with that eliminated, that visa opens, it gives it to all the EB1, EB2 from around the world. And I mean, it's just, there's going to be so many ramifications, right? But I totally see it happening. And I see the State Department being able to use the funds to kind of expand their expansion. So absolutely crazy.
That is super crazy. Just thinking about all the things, right? Like, so for example, for sibling petitions in countries, Philippines, Mexico, it takes 25, 27 years for the sibling to be able to come.
Yeah.
So if you're like 30, when your sibling petitions you, by the time that you immigrate, you're 57, you don't have the same energy to come and rebuild everything. On top of that, your whole life is back home.
Right.
Right. So like at the moment that you immigrate, now you have to pay, you may not have the funds. Right. Like, so it makes it impossible for people to come now. But most people are not going to have, you know, even $10,000. Right. Overseas. That's a lot of money. Right? Like,
a lot of people's annual salary overseas is 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 a year. So to be able to take that money a whole year to give it to the State Department and say, oh, this is a bond insurance, right? Now you do a lot of consulate work, right? Just, I mean, the past 10 consulates that you've worked with, I mean, what are they? What are the clients? What are the backgrounds?
Yeah, so what we have seen, for example, we had an interview at the Ciudad Juarez Consulate, which is in Mexico, and this was for an immigrant visa for children of a U.S. citizen. So what they did is they referred them to the citizenship unit at the consulate to try to apply for citizenship instead of granting the immigrant visas. Not sure why that really happened. I've never seen that happen before with our clients. The reason why we didn't apply for citizenship is the mother did not qualify, did not have the 5-year physical presence to transfer citizenship to the children. On top of that, one of the children was already aged out. So he was already 22. So he can't really get citizenship from the mother anymore, even if she were to meet the 5-year physical presence, right? So they get this referral, they send them to the citizenship unit, they go in there, they show up, and then the officer says, why are you here? What's the problem? And then they say, we don't know. They sent us from downstairs. They told us to come upstairs and come and talk to you because you were going to help us continue the process. So then the officer says, well, has she lived there? Blah, blah, blah. And they say, no, she doesn't have that documentation. So the officer says, you know, I'm really confused why you guys are even here in the first place. Go back downstairs. It was a whole 2 days and a half talking to different officers. The client is there. No one can go in with the client. Attorneys are not allowed to be there. So it's just a lot of coaching, you know, and contacting them and telling them, okay, no, you have to explain it this way so that they can, you know. So that was the first thing that we've seen this month, is that now they are sending applicants to apply for citizenship. I'm not sure if it's just to reconfirm before they can issue the immigrant visa. At the end, the immigrant visa was issued. The client already has a passport preparing to come to the U.S. But that was the first thing. Second thing is a consulate in Cambodia. This was not our client, though. This was a client that reached out after their immigrant visa was denied because of public charge. So we're, you know, helping to investigate whether there was a co-sponsor that actually had been submitted with the case, or if it was a simple, you know, like mishap on the legal office that was helping them do the process. But a more scrutiny in these cases, you know, they are now just looking at every single thing that they can possibly look at in order to challenge these cases or deny these cases. And it makes the process, you know, harder for clients. Now, imagine under the pressure of having to qualify for a benefit, then you get told that you don't qualify for this benefit, you actually qualify for this one, but that's actually a mistake. So it's a back and forth. And then for the one from Cambodia, was she really not qualified? Was she really, you know, like supposed to be under that public charge rule? Or was it something where the officer just misread the documentation? So people that are doing consular processing need to prepare for the back and forth now. And have a lot of documentation. So when we prepared our interview packets, we give clients copies of everything that we've submitted, so they know, they see everything, and then we update all of the affidavits of support. Most of the time for consulates, right, you wait about a year to get an interview, even more. So from the time when you submitted an affidavit of support till the time the client goes to the interview, a lot of things happen. People can become unemployed, people get pregnant and have children, they can then go on maternity leave. So there are just so many things. So be very diligent, prepared for your interviews, expect to be questioned about different things that are not even related to your case. For example, citizenship. Clients were so caught off guard. We didn't even train them on that because it didn't apply to them. But now officers, you know, doing these referrals and just
and we're seeing this across the board. I mean, you're doing cases with clients in Cambodia, with Philippines, with Mexico, with Canada, Colombia. There's so many things and consulates, and we have offices in Taipei, Hainan, and in Shanghai, and so we're doing a lot of Asian countries as well. It's just the public charge thing. It started last year, and it just got revamped this year, and it's going to continue, right? It's going to get stricter in the U.S., and it's definitely already really strict overseas, especially with the 755 country, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and this might be the biggest news. And it's the final rule that just came out. Essentially, well, let me just read it. Right here. Trump administration issues final rule to end foreign student visa abuse. What is the abuse they're talking about?
Is this the DS?
That is a DS. So for, I don't know, 30 plus years, an international student coming into the United States, they have to get a visa overseas, and a lot of times some visas could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, but that's your ticket to come into the US. But once you are in front of a customs officer, what they stamp in your passport, what they write into your immigration file is duration of status, meaning you come in to study, but once your study is over, you can extend that study. You can go from one school to a different school, and go to a different school, and go to a different school, and you could just then stay. You're a valid duration of status. With this final rule that issued this morning, that is no longer the case. If you are here for a bachelor's degree, maximum will give you a visa for 4 years. Once you come in, the customs officer is going to stamp your passport or right into your system. You can only stay here for 4 years. If you graduate early and you got into a master's program, you want to extend it, you need to formally apply with USCIS. You need to pay for a filing fee. You might have to pay for a premium processing fee. It's thousands and thousands of dollars just to continue schooling for another year, another 2 years, right? This applies to international students, F-1 international students. This applies to J-1s. It applies to a lot of different categories. And the grace period to change status as an international student, you think the 20-year-old, graduate, in the past they have 60 days grace period to find a job, to find an OPT, to find a work permit, to find another school. Now it's shortened to 30 days. So international students coming into the United States who are about to graduate, who are just entering the US for the first time, they're going to be in for a world of shock with this new policy being implemented. And basically, international students need to be much more mindful of their status. They're only allowed for such a short time. And it's going to be much harder to do change of status from one school to another. It's going to be harder to extend your stay from bachelor's degree to master's degree to a PhD, and it forces people to be able to have to get the green card much faster. In the past, international students come in, they go to another school, they go to another school, they go to another school. The girl, the boy, 27, 28, 29, spend here long enough time, meet the right person, get married, get a green card. Now, that is going to be much more difficult because bachelor's degree, well, now you're forced to get a master's degree. Master's degree, graduate program, really expensive. Now you have to get a PhD after you're done. And during that time, right, it's not guaranteed. And if something goes wrong, your student visa can get canceled. And it's harder and harder for people to be able to stay here for, more than 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, right? And so this is going to curtail a lot of international staying in the country. Potentially might open up a lot more visas for overseas students to be able to come in. But once they come in, they have a short period from international student. Now you need to do your self-funding H1B, or you need to change to O1, or now you need to change to E2, or now you need to change to another visa category. You're not able to just stay on F1 international students for a lot longer now. So this is a huge change, and it's going to make a huge impact on schools, on individuals, and on people who are just students, and they're studying and they didn't know it was so difficult, and everybody else did it this way, right? They came in as a student, they got, into another school, they just stayed here, and then they met somebody, they get married, and they get a green card. That's just going to be a lot more difficult.
That's great. So what should F1 students, like, going forward, what should they do now?
If you're in your bachelor's degree or whatever status you're in, you need to be very, very mindful of what are your options. It's crazy to think of 18, 19, 20-year-olds to think about having to get married. But before that decision process could easily be postponed for 5 years, right? So let's say you graduate with a STEM degree. You can have 3 years of OPT, and then you get another school, maybe 1 or 2 years. That easily puts you at 27. Maybe that's the ripe marrying age for females and for some males, right? And so, but that becomes a lot harder now. OPT might be canceled in the future. It might be much more difficult. So maybe you only get 1 year. And your next school is not going to be as easy as it was in the past. You can't just choose any old school. You might have to be forced to fork out 30, 40, 50,000 in graduate school programs, right? To go to art school, to go to an MBA, to go to some other graduate school. So it's going to be much more expensive, and you can't work, right? And so, or day one CPTs are going to be much more difficult as well, because you already got a great bachelor's degree. Now, how are you going to this day one CPT school that is, not as reputable? So USCIS is supervising all of that, right? So it's going to push bachelor's degree to finding great master's degrees, and master's degrees are going to be looking into PhDs, and all of that is going to be really expensive for the individual, for the family. And so if you don't want to just continue schooling in the US and forking out lots of tuition, then you have to really think about a startup idea, or you have to have a company sponsor you for H1B, right? And so either you are an amazing, talented student that a lot of jobs are seeking and are willing to hire you and pay the high H1B cost, or you are a bright entrepreneur that you have a lot of funds, so you can start your own company and you're going to succeed and take huge risks, or you're going to pay high tuition. But this rule is effectively making people have to choose that at a ripe 19, 20-year-old. I mean, your kids are what, 19-year-old, 20-year-old?
20 and 18.
2018?
Yes.
Imagine they have to make that choice. Get married, be an entrepreneur, or pay $50,000 for a graduate school program.
That is so much pressure. I'm just thinking as a mother of, young adults. And on top of that, I'm like, just as a mother itself, like, okay, so now they have to plan for spending bachelor's degree money, and then immediately spending, before you probably had like a little bit of room to say, okay, you go work on your OPT, and then you go and
save
start
up.
graduate school, save up for your graduate school, and then you go to graduate school. Now you have to have a plan from the beginning. So it's either you make it or you break it, right? There is no wiggle time, there is no playing time, no fun, and 18, 19-year-olds, they don't really take life that serious. It sounds like now they have to mature as soon as they turn 18 and they make that decision to come to the U.S. I don't do F1 visa, but just thinking on the perspective of, as a mother, as, just as a human, who wants to get married at 19 or 20?
Right, it's hard.
Maybe
it's
just
very
me,
hard.
But...
It's
but,
definitely hard.
it's extremely hard. Like, you don't even know your own self at that age. So why would you want to get married? And then on top of that, have the pressure to start up a business and figure your life out in the span of like 4 years. So it's just difficult. It just seems like everything is just getting harder and harder. But
and I feel so much for international students because I ran the club in high school and in college for these international students. They are basically having to fight at the boss level right when they start, because You have to pay for the college tuition. You have to pay for the high cost of living in the US. Your English is not as fluent as most other people, and you're still adapting to the culture, and you have to get a job, and you have to figure out your status, and you have to do it on a time crunch, and you can't get loans. So it's like they have to do all of that just to be able to live and breathe, drink the water in the United States or go home, right? And it's like easier said than done, right? I came to high school here. I came to college here. I've spent 10 years here, and now go back to my home country, my home
start
language
from
is not as
zero.
good,
Yeah.
like they don't recognize the US degree. Like it's just so much harder. But to continue forward, it's just such a hard battle. But if you make it past the visa, you make it past the green card, it is so much easier.
You have to beat all the odds.
Yeah, once
before
you, yeah, but it's like you beat the final boss at the green card level, and then everything else. Like getting a mortgage is so simple if you can get a green card, right? It's
Yeah.
but it's a catch-22 too. You have to survive everything and win the green card first before starting life. And sometimes people start their life at 30, at 35, and they work for a little bit longer, and now they're trying to retire, right? And so
To spend all that money and then try to buy a house when you have all these loans because you had to spend all that money for education.
Yeah.
So now you can't even buy a home, right? Like
Right.
you're in debt.
Yeah.
All these new people that are coming, possibly in debt. Not if they can get loans here, but they probably need to get home loans back home.
Right.
So now they are in debt. They have all this pressure to pay. They have to figure it out whether they want to get married or not. It's just a lot. I really feel for them too.
Yeah.
It's culture shock is the worst thing that a human can experience. Like being homesick is the worst feeling in the world, and I just feel like these kids are gonna be put into so much pressure, and
And sometimes their parents don't understand. Their parents are overseas. They send everything over.
They can. I think even if they try to understand, right? Like they don't. They think like we made the sacrifice. As a parent, you're like, okay, we are making the sacrifice for you to go to school. You have to try your best.
Yeah.
Little do they know the kids are trying to adapt to so many different things.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to find yourself at 18.
Yeah.
So like peer pressured, and there's just so much, and it's like your parents still demand that you do your best.
Yeah.
And it's like, I really can't, this is just breaking me. Never mind. And what if the child says, never mind, I want to go home?
Yeah.
Now all this money is already spent.
Yeah.
You're still in debt.
Yeah.
It's just a lot. It's a lot.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Also, aren't international students like one of the only things keeping a lot of universities afloat? Like a lot of the small private ones, because they pay the full fee.
Yeah.
They pay a lot of money.
Oh, they pay double, sometimes even more. Yeah.
And so this policy is funding it even more, right? It hits another bird with another stone, or the same stone hits another bird, right? So now like schools are losing all this tuition and schools are shutting down. But with this policy, it's forcing all these international students to go and pay those fees, right? And to pay that tuition and to continue the schooling. So the graduate school programs are still getting funded. Now you might be saying, that's crazy. There's all these barriers. Who would want to come to the US? Well, the US is still trying to cut back on the visas issuing, right? A lot of people are still applying for visas and all getting denied. And so there's such a big demand all around the world for people to come to get that US education, to be willing to pay for that tuition. And so even then, that is just how attractive the US is, how much demand there are for F-1 international student visas from countries all over the world. And you have to think, the elites from all the countries, if you just think about that, right? Every country have their elites, and they want their children come to the US to get that education. And that's a lot of people, and that's a lot of the visas. I see there's a bunch of questions coming in. So,
Yeah, so we'll take some questions now. I have one retail theft of $57, no jail, no probation, first time in my life, waiting for my N400. Is there any chance of approval due to this?
Absolutely. As a philosophy major, if you're asking, is there a possibility? Absolutely. Now reverse that question. Is there a possibility for a denial? Absolutely as well. The good thing for you is you can look into the petty theft exception for adjustment of status to get a green card. You already got the green card. You got a green card for multiple years now if you're applying for citizenship. So there is a high chance that you should be able to get the citizenship. Now, look up the good moral character requirement that came out last year in August. Just search that up, right? August, good moral character, USCIS. You'll see the things that they're looking into. So are you able to hold a job? Are you able to pay your taxes? Do you have letter recs? Do you have a good education? Are you healthy, right? These things they also really care about as well. Look into that, use it, to prove you deserve the citizenship.
For N600K, aging out in 8 months.
Jeez.
So what can we do to ensure the oath interview before they turn 18?
Great. Hi.
And do senators help?
I definitely know who's asking. Nice to see you. The N600K case that we talked about in the past, that just got approved yesterday. And so I'm going to go through that success story in a bit after everything that we're going to go through. So you could stay tuned to kind of hear exactly what went down. And hopefully that helps.
How long is the 601 waiver taking?
Right now, 22.5 months. So that's the normal processing time. 80% of the cases are supposed to get approved in 22 months. However, if you go on the website and you check the day when your case was received, it gives a time frame of 36 months before contacting the field office or the service center. I'm sorry. So I would say anywhere between 22 to 36 months.
And I would expect a request for evidence maybe anywhere between the 18 months to the 22 months mark. So they finally reviewed it. If they see that it's not enough, there's a high chance that they give a request for evidence. So you should start preparing the request for evidence.
To update all the documentation right after like 2 years.
Okay, any other questions?
Why are they denying J1 with no objection waiver?
So we saw that news as well. We haven't seen it happen at our firm. We've seen the possibility of that. We've seen the other law offices handle that and now filing it and J1 waiver getting denied even though they got approved. So just for context, a J1 visa holder coming into the country as a trainee working, normally they have to go back to their home country. Now, if you don't want to go back to your home country, you have to get a waiver. You get the waiver. Right? So this is not what you're saying. They got the waiver from the State Department. And now when they're filing for adjustment of status, a USCIS officer is saying, you got the waiver, you got the J1, but I'm not going to recognize it. I still think you need to leave. That is bizarre because we haven't seen that before. I haven't seen the denial notice. If we see the denial notice, we might do a motion to reopen. We might challenge it in court. Like you already got the waiver. They fulfill the INA guidelines. You cannot not do the adjustment. You cannot use your discretionary to deny them. So that would be really surprising. Now, if you're just saying somebody needed a waiver, they applied for the waiver and the waiver got denied, well, that happens all the time, right? I mean, that's not super surprising. Different consulates have different jurisdictions, State Department, and but if you're saying they got the waiver, but yet USCIS still denied it, that is something we're beginning to see and it's very surprising, and I think it's ripe for litigation.
Case went from interviews scheduled to cases being processed. My interview's on the 30th. What is this?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Say that again, Gail.
Interviews scheduled to cases being processed, but their interview is on the 30th still.
Sometimes it's just the system. You're like, right, a system error. We just heard the systems are being updated, so it may be like glitched. So if the interview was already scheduled, prepared for the interview, if the case status went back to case in process, then that just means they are continuing to work on it until the interview happens. So nothing really to worry about. But yeah, just prepared for the interview because you know the interview is coming.
Are you taking removal proceeding cases in Sacramento?
Probably not right now.
Do senators and congresspeople help cases?
Yes.
N600 is filed in May 2026. Did my biometrics in June 2026. When can the child receive the certificate?
After the interview, and usually the same day of the interview. Same day or next day.
What happens if the child turns 18 this October?
If the case is not done, then the case will be denied.
So isn't there a law against unreasonable bonds for this news?
Oh, yes. That is one of the big challenge, and that's why, in Trump fashion, lets word out, sees the media's reaction, and then tones it back, potentially, right? So it's a lot of theatrics, it's a lot of feeling, it's a lot of, is this gonna go, is it not gonna go? Are the different allies, supporters for this, against this? But I'm seeing everything kind of pieced together, and it kind of makes sense. $100,000 bond, previously last year, what was already tested out as a pilot program was a $10,000 tourist visa bond. So you could just see the math calculating. Well, to get a tourist visa, people have to pay $10,000 and they have to leave the US within 3 months to 6 months. Well, if you get a green card and you could be in the U.S. for 5 years, 10 years, that's much more valuable. Maybe we should make it 100,000, right? And there's going to be different legal justifications for this, because if you are a green card holder, you come into the U.S., you are able to potentially receive a lot of benefits. And if the government is on the line for it, and the government has to go after your joint sponsor for it, well, that's a lot of cost. And so maybe this 100,000 is to go after the legal to fund the legal proceeding to get the joint sponsors to pay for it, right? But realistically, the government hasn't done that in the past, and if the government just pockets the interest and the money on it, it would far better for the State Department. And so this is just effectively an extra fee payment to the State Department. Whether or not that's legal, well, it's the State Department, so the executive branch could do a lot of different things. I'm doing an in-depth research and writing a paper right now on all the bonds that immigration has ever come up with. And so this is going to be it's very new, but I do think from everything we've seen this past 2 years, the Trump administration's immigration policy is extremely sophisticated and well thought out. He learned a lot from the first administration, and he's winning a lot in the Supreme Court, and he's winning a lot in all sorts of different policies. And so it is going to be a really hard challenge. If you try to do that in the U.S., for example, if somebody who's applying for adjustment of status and they have to pay a $100,000 bond, they'll be sued up the wazoo, right? But at the State Department, they can do it. Now, adjustment of status, we could say, well, we're going to deny, and you have to go back to your home country, and now you have to make this payment, right? So we'll see.
Any news on the 75-country ban?
I have not seen any news on it. I do think it's going to continue.
My EB2 NIW priority date is September 2025. Haven't gotten any updates since. So are processing times taking longer these days?
Processing time as well as priority dates, yes. But by October 1st, we'll see a big update.
How's the K1 path?
You do a lot of K1s. What do you think? I've ever since I started practicing, I've always discouraged people from doing the K1. Especially now, which I think is even harder. But what do you think? You've done so many K1s.
I was gonna say the same thing. We always discourage K1 only because it takes the same time as a CR1, after marriage, right? Like you do marriage petition, so it takes the same amount of time. Is a very similar process because you still have to go to the embassy. So you do the petition, you go to the embassy, then you get the visa, then you come, which is exactly the same thing you do for marriage-based petition. You do the petition, you go to the interview, and then instead of getting just a visa, then you get now an immigrant visa. So you come in as a permanent resident, and then you can immediately start working or go to school. So processing times for K1, the same as marriage immigrant visa. So I would probably say best bet. We've always discouraged.
Yeah.
We've always discouraged this.
Yeah.
But it is doable. It's doable. Yeah. Totally doable.
Yeah. And from our talks with USCIS on K1, when we go to AILA conferences, they say approximately 70% of K1 applications are done as an individual basis, so with no law firm. And so it's just like individuals putting it together and sending it out. And with that comes with a bunch of different things. Things are done wrong. There's a lot of fraud. Law offices are not supervising it, and there's a lot of confusion and a lot of wait time, and so a lot of delay. And so it's just like it's annoying and nasty for the consulate, for USCIS. It's annoying for the individuals. There are small exceptions for some people who they can only do the K1. It just makes sense for them to do the K1. And under those small exceptions, you do it well. You just want to distinguish yourself from all the other K1s. That's the general idea.
I'm still waiting 47 months for I-751 waiver application. How much longer will that take?
I'm going to assume less than 12 months because 48 months is a really good cutoff. So if you're waiting another 12 months, I think it'll be quite surprising. Now, if it's that long, you really should throw in your N-400 application to push them. That's a shortcut to try to get the approval. So you can become a 10-year green card and a citizen at the same time.
And make sure that if your extension is expiring, that you contact USCIS to let them know you need a a stamp on your passport to prove that you're a permanent resident, because the extension is only for 48 months. So if you're at the 47th month mark, good idea to contact USCIS, make sure that you have proof of status.
Right.
Do N600 applicants require interviews?
A lot of our clients get interviews. I don't think it will be waived. I mean, almost to the best of my knowledge, from the past, I think 10 plus years, all the different N600 cases we've done all had interviews.
Yes.
What big announcement do you anticipate in October regarding employment-based green cards?
Oh, it's just visibility.
Yeah. So the reason why I said October is that's the visa bulletin update. It changes a lot. It changes every single month, but in October it changed the biggest. And because of the 75 country ban that we saw all this year, that will have a direct and huge impact on the employment categories. And so we'll see how fast it moves. Maybe it jumps by a lot, maybe it doesn't, but we're anticipating a big jump.
October is the beginning of the new fiscal year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So new visas are allocated. Yeah.
What's the situation with this $100,000 green card fee?
It's a Wall Street Journal reported that there are talks about people who are applying to be green card holders overseas, both family and business immigration, and they might have to pay for this $100,000 bond. And the idea of the bond is the government wants to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so, like, for example, the other types of bonds, right? The bond to leave the country, right? So if you're entering the country as a parole status, well, you need a guarantee you're going to leave. So I'm going to buy this bond. If you're trying to apply for a tourist visa, well, you can't, work illegally and you have to leave the U.S. before your visa expires. You have to apply for this bond. You have to pay for this bond. We've never seen a bond for a green card holder. We've seen, affidavits of support where you get a sponsor to validate for you, but then now you put the burden on the government to go after the sponsor if you overstay. And that becomes a big litigation case, and the government has to find the sponsor, and whether the sponsor didn't actually sign it, it was fraudulent. So the government really doesn't like that, even though legally that's part of the joint sponsor process. So one way to make everything simpler is just use money, right? You want the green card, you are getting the benefit. So instead of a sponsor, well, you still need a sponsor, but on top of the sponsor, get this $100,000 bond, right? Pay $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 into this fund. We'll return it to you if you are behaving, if you become a citizen, if you've already worked 40 credits. So all that is being fleshed out. We haven't seen the final rule yet, but it's all beginning to make sense.
I feel like it should at least be treated as like a bond, like a CD that you can buy, right? So there's an interest rate, like a low interest rate, but because it's like you're giving an interest-free loan to the government for at least 5 years, right?
Or longer, maybe longer.
I think the way they see it is that you're given as a free interest loan, but you have the privilege to be in our country.
Yeah. I mean, that's how bonds work, right? If you're a criminal, you get detained, you want to be let out. Yep. And the bond thing is the government doesn't actually work on the bond. It's a private enterprise, right?
Really?
Like imagine you go to Allstate to buy this bond. Or obviously Allstate doesn't do it, but I'm just saying go to farm, there's people who sell these bonds and then you pay into it. And then if you don't, if for example, you got the green card, you come to the US and you defraud a whole bunch of people and you get a whole bunch of money and you leave, well, now the government has to go after, now there's insurance that's covering that, right? And so you pay $15,000, but you defrauded $200,000. Well, so there's a bond, insurance for that. But realistically, it's a numbers game. 500,000, 1 million people who get immigrant visas to come into the country. Most of them, from my perspective, are good people. Don't defraud the government and get green cards, and but sometimes they can't become citizens because they don't live here long enough, or because they already retired, they don't work, right? And so they just kind of forfeit this money. So a lot of details will have to be spelled out, but the government is creating this brand new agency that is covering a lot of their costs. Never would I've thought, but it's happening, and it's actually making sense that this is what they're wanting to do all along. Like, why are you making adjustment status so difficult just because there's 11 million backlog? We've always had a backlog. Oh, you want to kick them out overseas so they can pay for this bond. I get it now, right? Why are you making citizenship so hard? Because once they pay for the bond, if they can't become citizen, you never have to return the money. Oh, I get it now, right? Like, just, wow, the mind of the president is definitely very business savvy.
Yeah, my question is, who is getting paid for the 100,000? Like, where are the processing fees going? You know what I mean? If it's a private enterprise, like, how do I apply?
You want to start a business?
Yeah,
Is that what you
right.
want to do? Galen's bond.
Seems like that's a pretty sweet gig if you're getting interest-free loans.
Yeah.
Sure.
You just need 100,000 up front, and then
Yeah.
okay. Do you still recommend applying for advanced parole? I heard it's on pause.
Nope. I think maybe what you're looking into is parole. Humanitarian parole had been on pause, but now there's a $1,000 fee. But advanced parole hasn't been on pause or canceled. I recommend advanced parole for DACA holders, for people who are on adjustment status, for everything. Maybe we're potentially thinking about is emergency advanced paroles. I haven't seen that as a pause, but definitely the arguments are a lot stranger, right? Because let's say in the past, you come in as a tourist visa, you apply for adjustment status, and oh no, I need to go back home to my home country to do something emergently, and so I need to apply for emergency, something that's supposed to take 6 months to normally process. I want it in a day, I want it in a week, and now you put the burden on USCIS. Why don't you give it to me? I have this humanitarian reason. Well, with a new memo that came out this year, well, then just go home. Abandon your green card application. Just get your green card overseas, right? So emergency advanced parole, the argument is a lot weaker now in this political climate with the new memos. But I don't think it's been canceled.
What is the maximum time it's taken your client to change USCIS field office locations?
Maximum or least amount of time?
Maximum time.
Maximum amount of time is usually 6 months, and that's already stretching it. So if you're moving to another state, if you're moving to another county, they have to transfer the file. So it's good to contact USCIS, let them know, when you need to transfer my file, moving, especially if you're closer to getting an interview, because then that can create a problem when you're scheduled for your interview at the new field office, and then you show up and then they say, we don't have your file. Your file is at, for example, in LA, and you're here in Orange County. So we don't have your file. So good to contact them and let them know that you need that file transferred.
And technically, you're supposed to live there for 30 days or 60 days before you can transfer the jurisdiction, right?
3 months.
3 months?
It's usually 3 months.
So the client is now in Washington, D.C. They want the case to be done in L.A. They will have to come here, live here for 3 months, then request a transfer, and it could take 6 months. And then they do the interview.
Yes.
Right.
So appearance attorneys always recommend, if you're going to move and you're closer to get an interview, just don't move until the interview happens, because then there is that jurisdiction problem. And then you would have to wait a lot longer to be interviewed. So for people that are waiting for citizenships or green card adjustment of a status interviews, attorneys always recommend just wait until you move after the green card is approved, or after your citizenship is approved. Otherwise, it gets really messy, and then files get lost, believe it or not. In the process of transferring, clients' files have gotten lost. So it creates just a lot more burden on the client. So.
What is the topic for the success story today?
It's an N600K visa category, and Margaret was able to work on this case with me, and it was so awesome. The client applied for the N600 last year, but couldn't make it to the interview, and they had to deny and close out the case. But the client needed to reopen that case. And the thing is, the client can only come into the U.S. for a short 2-week period and needs to go into that interview within that 2 weeks. And if you know anything with the government, this is what you're telling the government. This is what the ask. I need you to reopen my case. I need you to pre-approve it. I need you to interview me within this 2-week window that I'm setting for you, and I need you to approve it. Please, right? So the client tried again and again to try to get the government to agree to that. As expected, this year, the government is just radio silent. No response, just empty. And the request is kind of crazy. But to the client, it's like, why is it crazy? I paid the fees. I qualify for it. In my home country, I would have done it. Everybody would have done it. It's a simple arrangement, just put on the calendar. Like, what's the big deal? But in the United States right now, in this administration, you want 2 citizenships with an email? Like, come on, right? So the client was just so fed up and so worried. And this is one opportunity, one shot to get it, because the client is a really reputable surgeon overseas, and getting 2 weeks off with the family, with the kids, is nearly impossible. And to be able to come into the US and go to this interview and get it, it's unbelievable, and it's super important. And so they have one shot. And so we did a consultation, and I told the client, well, the best thing we can do is we take your application, we go into the field office, and we talk to the director. Hey, look, this is a situation. They filed it, they paid it, they qualify for it. They have this 2-week window. Can you help arrange, please? Right? And we just face-to-face conversation. And they said, you can do that? I'm like, well, we could try. We can't guarantee it could be done, but that's the best we can do. So we prepared everything, and we went, I think, in on a Friday. We were turned away at the door. We were turned away at the second door. We were turned away by different officers. But, we have thick skin. We just kept on saying, hey, we have a case that we need to see a supervisor, right? So we went in. Luckily, as attorneys, we have that privilege, right, to be a little bit more thick-skinned. And we talked to the officer, and the officer said, let me take a look. Opened up the case. Didn't make us even pay for a motion to reopen filing, right? Because normally when the case gets denied and when you want to reopen it, you fill out the 290B form, and you had to pay like $800 now, I believe, to reopen each case, and that's 2 cases. And so we prepare the check. We have everything ready. Like, we're willing to pay for this motion to reopen, but we really need it within that 2-week window. They reviewed everything and said, you know what? We'll reopen the case. Go home, right? And so we gave everything over to them. They didn't cash a check. We went home, and that weekend, I think within 2 or 3 days, the case was reopened. And within another 2-3 weeks, the appointment notice came, and the time was scheduled, and the client went in, and the same day presented everything, and the case was approved, and the certificate came, and now 2 kids, I think around 4 years old, they became citizens. And N600K is uniquely special because the parents, they're not inheriting their citizenship from the parents, right? The dad is a green card holder. The mom is a U.S. citizen, but did not live in the U.S. for long enough. Left the U.S. when she was 10 years old. And so did not have enough citizenship power to pass on her citizenship to her children. So they have to inherit their citizenship from her grandparents, from their grandparents. And so we prepared all the documents to prove that the grandparents are U.S. citizens, and they live in the U.S., and they have all the documents. And so they were able to present everything, and the officer was satisfied with all the documents, and the case got approved, right? And so they got it, they were finishing their vacation, and they're able to leave. But to think about that in this administration, right? People who come in as a tourist visa, because that's where the kids came in. They came in as a tourist visa, visa into the United States. They're UK citizens. And they came in, and they go into this interview within a few weeks, and they're able to leave as U.S. citizens and get a U.S. passport, right? That's the power of N600K. And the amount of cost that they save. They didn't have to do the I-130, they didn't have to do the 45, they didn't have to do the consular green card interview. They don't have to prove that the U.S. is their home. They're purposely stationed abroad. They don't have to pay that $100,000 bond fee. Like N600 and N600K to be able to help kids directly become citizens, skipping the visa, skipping the green card, saving decades. And now when the kids grow up, they can choose, well, do I want to live in the U.S. as a U.S. citizen, or do I want to live abroad? And so happy that Margaret and the team was able to make this happen. You also did a lot of N600Ks and N600K cases. And so we just want to share this success story. It's totally doable. It's great. And it's still the same day oath. We always get to do a few of these every single year. It is not the hardest thing in the world. You do a good job. You go in with the client, you interview. They're kids, They just want to double check the requirements. It is still an area that is very effective. So, it's just a shame because we've seen cases where they could have done the N600K but they didn't know about it, so they chose to do the normal I-130. And it's like, oh my God, you know, have to now wait additional decades, right, to get the same thing, you know. But success story. Go, Margaret.
Yes, Margaret.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Okay, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.